featuring the creator and lead host of Clutch Crew Sports, Zach. Unfortunately, Eric is an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, and he went through a pretty rough postseason watching my Portland Trailblazers pretty well dismantle his team. So,
dang. Okay, I did not realize we were going to go into that.
You sure you didn't lose your train of thought by looking at this picture here?
For those of you who don't know, Zach really likes Alex Morgan.
Featuring Nate, NFL and college football co-host. I don't think Indiana's very good, just being straight up, so I think it's pretty fair.
Indiana's getting triggered
cover
right now. You just triggered the whole state.
And I forgot to change it on here.
Oh, okay.
But it's here. I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna defend it.
Okay.
I do think Denver's a very average team. I'm gonna stick with my open pick.
Hello, everybody. Today we've got another miscellaneous topics episode for you today, and all of these topics are going to be about NFL stuff. Just want to let you know about that first off the bat, but I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about a new challenge that the podcasters and I have came up with, and it's basically a subscription challenge. So you're hearing this on the 1st of November, and this challenge is going to run all through the month of October from the 1st to the 30th. And the goal is going to be, we're each going to try and count how many subscribers that we can get to either YouTube, iTunes, or even some of the other podcasting sites like Stitcher or Google Podcasts, really any podcasting site that we go out to. If you subscribe to it because we refer you, it'll add a point for our running total. And at the end of the month, we're going to see who's got the most points. And the reward is going to be whoever has the most points for getting subscribers is going to get to do a roasting of the other 3 podcasters in the next episode. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And another thing, too, to this challenge that I thought about and I'm going to add to it is if you guys really, for some reason, are a fan of one of the 4 of us, let's say you really like Eric's takes more than anybody else's, then whatever subscribers you can get to the channel, you can message me and I will add those numbers to Eric's count or whoever's count that you want. So that's going to be a way to interact with you guys. And at the end of November, there's going to be that roasting of, well, someone's going to be roasting all three of the other podcasters. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. I know the other guys are too. We all want to get to roast each other, but only one of us is going to get to do it. So it's really going to depend on who works the hardest to get subscribers to this channel. But we do have a special guest on the program today, our first guest of Clutch Crew Sports, my friend Kyle here. So I'll let him introduce himself and then we'll get started with the video.
Hey guys, I'm Kyle. I'm a USF student, same as Zach. I kind of have to say that my favorite college team is the Bulls, even though I do really like the Mountaineers, West Virginia Mountaineers. For NFL, my favorite team is definitely the Packers, even though I'm a Jared Goff fanboy, as Zach likes to call me. And in high school, I used to play football on my varsity team as a tight end and lineman.
Okay, cool, man. We're glad to have you here for this show.
Thanks.
And yeah, especially this third topic is going to really involve you and be a fun one to talk about. So let me do a breakdown here of the 3 topics that we're going to talk about today. So our first topic is going to be about the Carolina Panthers and whether they should start Cam Newton when he comes back from injury or keep rolling with Kyle Allen. And I do want to give a shout out to Jackson from Twitch. He's been watching some of our streams the past couple of days, and he's requested us to talk about this. So shout out to you, Jackson, for bringing up this topic. We really appreciate it. And you're going to hear what we think about it. And then Nate is going to talk about some NFL trades that happened / didn't happen that we thought might. So it's going to be the trades that we haven't talked about. We've talked about Ramsey, Sanders, and Sanu in past episodes, but this is going to be all the other significant ones that he thought were significant enough to talk about, I guess. And then finally is going to be a debate between me and Kyle about Aaron Rodgers for MVP. So I think if you know that Kyle's a Packers fan, that I think you know where he stands on this, but me and him are going to debate about that, and we've got some other people to talk about too in that MVP discussion. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a lot of fun, and Nate's going to chime in when he thinks he can. So I'm looking forward to this, guys. So let's start out here with our first topic: Cam Newton or Kyle Allen. Who should the Panthers start when Cam Newton comes back from injury? And to be honest, this is something that I really did not, I really couldn't tell you an answer until maybe an hour before we're recording this, because I just thought this was such a tough decision for Carolina to have to make, because obviously Cam Newton's got the history of going to the Super Bowl as a quarterback, winning an MVP, having all pro seasons, all the accolades and stuff. And he's been their franchise quarterback for the past decade. And then there's this Kyle Allen guy in the bottom right of our screen who comes in. He's a second-year player, but essentially this is like his rookie year since he only started once last season. And he won as a starter his first 4 games, I think. Had his first loss against San Francisco this past weekend. It wasn't a good performance, but San Francisco is a really tough defense, so I don't put too much blame for Kyle Allen for that, just because San Francisco is a really good team. But the real question is who do you go with when Newton's back from injury? And after thinking about it for a while, I'm going to show you guys the stats here. These stats are from Kyle Allen's season this year and Cam Newton's season last year. They look pretty similar if you're just looking off the pure stats here. Cam Newton, I think, gives you a much better mobile threat than Kyle Allen does for sure, but that's also the reason why I'm going with Kyle Allen here, is because while Cam Newton has been a great mobile threat as a quarterback, he's just injury prone and he can't stay healthy. Kyle mentioned this before the podcast. Is he constantly getting hurt? But he's getting hurt in different places. The shoulder injury, leg injury. So he's just been bruised up and battered the past couple seasons, and it's really impacted his performance. He's never lived up to that Super Bowl season that he had. After that, it's just consistently he's been getting worse each year. I'm just not a big Cam Newton fan anymore. He's still a good quarterback, and he definitely could start for a lot of teams out there. And they didn't trade him at this trade deadline that passed. So unless they were blown away by an offer, I didn't think that would happen. But still, he's still on their team. And the reason why I think that they should go with Kyle Allen is he's a safe quarterback. I know you see the 7-3 touchdown ratio, but all 3 of those interceptions were against that San Francisco defense. And that's, like I said before, that's a really hard defense to play. So the fact that he struggled there as basically a rookie quarterback is not that big of a deal. But prior to that game, he'd been winning, and he was safe with the football, which is something that Cam Newton kind of struggled with, as you can see last year, that 24-13 touchdown to interception ratio. As far as passing yards per game go, he's not lighting it up, but he still has a decent completion percentage. He's not been playing bad. So he's a young guy. He's cheap. The team seems to like him. They're rallying around him. They're winning games that they weren't winning with Cam Newton. Remember last year they had a really disappointing record. So I think it makes more sense for them to go with the future here with Kyle Allen as opposed to Cam Newton, because you never know when Newton's going to get hurt next. And I think that they could get some good pieces for him in a trade potentially. So this is a really similar situation to the Foles Minshew thing going on in Jacksonville. Really, really similar. But in this instance, I think that they should go with Kyle Allen. I think even though it's a small sample size, I think he's proven that he's a reliable quarterback. He's not the best or anything, but for what he is, he's been playing well, and the team's been winning with him. So he can only improve, I think. Whereas Cam Newton, we've already seen his best. And right now, last season he didn't have a great season. The start of this year, he didn't have a great season. So I really do think Kyle Allen should be the long-term starter. And I think Newton should, probably ride the bench when he comes back, just because Kyle Allen gives him the best chance to win right now. So I'm curious to hear your guys' takes on this as well.
So I agree with Zach here. I think Kyle Allen should be the starter, even when Newton comes back. Although my reasoning's not entirely the same. I think, like Zach said, Cam Newton's been injury prone really throughout his career. A lot of that obviously is due to the his mobility and all the running he does. He gets banged up a lot. He's missed a significant amount of time, like each of the last few years with injuries, and obviously he's missed most of this year as well. So I think the main reason I would say to keep him on the bench for the rest of this year is just like, don't rush him back from this injury. I think there's no reason to hurry him back when Allen's been playing this well. I think if he comes back, week 10 or 11, whatever that may be, there's a good chance he gets hurt again, re-aggravates the same injury or gets a new injury. I think it's best if they just let him sit out the rest of the season, spend the offseason rehabbing, and try and get back to normal for next year. And maybe there will be a competition, and they can figure it out then. But I think in the meantime, I definitely agree with Zach. I think they're in good hands with Kyle Allen at quarterback. He hasn't been super flashy stats-wise, but he's definitely been leading them to some good wins. They lost last week to the 49ers, but they've been on a tear lately, so that's pretty forgivable. Other than that, they've been pretty steady, and really that offense kind of goes through Christian McCaffrey to begin with. So as long as they got someone there who can facilitate getting the ball to him, not turning the ball over a whole lot, and kind of letting the defense do their thing, I think he can get through the rest of the season pretty well. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
So Kyle, did you want to say anything about who you think should be starting long term?
Like I said, I feel like Kyle Allen should be the starting next quarterback for the next game. And it's not really just for the name, even though the name's pretty great. I'm just going to be spitting the same facts, but Kyle Allen's a safer quarterback. With a foot injury on Cam Newton, he's not going to be so mobile anymore. He's pretty much, I feel like he's a liability to the team right now. And because I feel like he's a liability to the Panthers, I feel like I don't know, you guys could take your pick on this, but I feel like no other teams would really want Cam Newton as their starting quarterback. I may be wrong. I may be thinking one team specifically would want Cam Newton. But with how Cam Newton is right now, I feel like he's not going to be traded anytime soon.
Okay, yeah. I think the best fit for him would be Chicago. But the only thing with that is you don't know, is Chicago still believing in Trubisky? Do they still think that he is the man? But obviously most people don't think he is. So I think that would be an upgrade to a good team with a bad quarterback. So yeah, I agree with you there that his destinations are limited because a lot of teams have young quarterbacks that they like. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. He's obviously there's I think, a better than 50% chance that he's with the Panthers next year, but still, it's something to keep an eye on. And I think, like Nate said, I think there might be a true competition next year to see who it is, but I do think they'll eventually end up going with Kyle Allen. So we'll move on now to our next topic here about some NFL trades. So I'll let Nate start that.
Yeah, so kind of a busy time the last couple of weeks with the NFL trade deadline. We're recording this show on Tuesday the 29th, so just wrapped up today. There were a few big moves, but as we got really close to the deadline, it kind of slowed down a little bit. As Zach mentioned, we already talked about the Mohamed Sanu, Jalen Ramsey, and Emmanuel Sanders trades in previous episodes. So you can go back and hear our thoughts on those if you're really interested. But what I'm gonna focus on today is the two big trades of today and this weekend, and then a couple of trades that I thought were really gonna happen and they didn't, and then kind of where those players could go from here. So we're gonna start out with a trade that I thought was pretty interesting, a little bit surprising this morning. The Rams dealt cornerback Aqib Talib to the Dolphins, along with a 5th-round pick in exchange for only a 7th-rounder from the Dolphins, which sounds kind of interesting on paper. They didn't really get anything in return for him, but it's pretty clear this was like a salary cap dump for the Rams. Wanting to get his salary off the books, which is why they traded away a 5th-round pick to kind of incentivize the Dolphins to make this move. And for the Dolphins, I'm not sure if they really wanted to leave that badly. Obviously, had no reason to really improve the roster right now because they haven't won any games yet. They're not going to make the playoffs. It's not really the type of move that logically you would think they would make. But with the addition of the 5th-round pick, it's kind of like they're almost trading up from the 7th round to the 5th round and kind of getting Talib's play for half a year as an added benefit. He hits free agency this year, I believe. And he's 33 years old, so I don't imagine the Dolphins or really any other team is going to be too eager to re-sign him, which is kind of obviously why the Rams wanted to get his contract from this year off the books. But what's really interesting about this deal is that I think it kind of signals that the Rams really want to sign Ramsey long term. It's kind of interesting that they got rid of their two biggest cornerbacks going into this year and brought in Ramsey. Kind of like they freed up the big salaries of those two guys to potentially keep Ramsey around, which we talked about that in a previous episode as well. They're going to have a tough time doing that with all the other cap commitments they have right now with Aaron Donald and some of those guys. But I think trading Talib this morning gives the Rams a little bit more room to try and get a deal done with Ramsey. So we'll see where that goes. Additionally, we had Kenyon Drake traded from Miami to the Cardinals. That's kind of a pretty classic tanking move on the Dolphins' part. They've basically been selling off all their big name players in exchange for draft picks to try and rebuild their team as quickly as possible. I think he could be a good fit with the Cardinals. You've seen all the injuries to David Johnson and Tremaine Edmonds this year, so they definitely need some running back help. I think he'd step in, and we've seen the speed and some of the attributes he has playing behind a pretty awful Miami O-line. I think he could potentially be a very good player for the Cardinals. So I think that trade made sense in both aspects for both teams. Other than that, it was pretty quiet trade deadline, which is really what I was more interested to talk about because it was a deadline that I think a lot of people that follow the NFL thought was going to be a lot more interesting, a lot more impactful than it was. So two of the main moves that I personally thought were going to happen were Trent Williams and O.J. Howard. I'm going to start with Trent Williams here. He's a 7-time Pro Bowl left tackle for the Redskins. And it's been pretty well followed, well publicized, but he's been holding out from the team since the offseason, trying to get a new contract. Washington hasn't budged. He hasn't budged either. He hasn't suited up for any games this year. So most people thought that Washington would trade him at some point. Maybe earlier in the season they didn't have as much incentive to do so. Maybe they thought they could still work out a deal, but neither side has come to terms. So most people thought it was almost a done deal that he would be moved by this afternoon's deadline, but no teams, I guess, could work out a deal with them. I don't know if the offers weren't high enough or why Washington decided not to move on from him, but we heard earlier that he was going to come back to the team, but still doesn't plan to play any games this year. So not totally sure what this means for Williams as far as his contract, if he's going to get paid at all this year. Clearly it's too late for the team to move on from him, so I guess he's just going to be sitting out games, maybe not getting paid. Kind of a similar situation to Le'Veon Bell a few years ago. But this was a pretty shocking non-move for me because there's a lot of teams that, namely contenders, that were kind of in need of some O-line help. Specifically, the Patriots were named as a potential suitor in the past few weeks just because O-line has really been the only kind of glaring weakness of that team. Brady's been under a little bit more pressure this year. Things haven't looked as cohesive on offense. A lot of people thought that Williams could step in at that left tackle spot and at least provide a year's worth of good coverage for Brady and potentially lead him to another Super Bowl run. So that was a deal that we thought would get done, but it didn't. So it'll be interesting this offseason to see what happens with Williams. I don't think he'll be in Washington next year. I think that's kind of a foregone conclusion. So it'll be interesting to see where he winds up. And then O.J. Howard was another name that I thought would be on the move this week just because his fit with the Buccaneers has been pretty bad this year. Bruce Arians and that new staff came in, and they have not utilized him really hardly at all. I think he's got maybe 100 yards or 200 yards this year. Not very many catches or targets at all, which is kind of surprising considering he was a top 10 pick, I believe, a couple years back.
I don't think top 10, but he was a first round pick.
First rounder for sure. Yeah. But someone that the team had a big investment in draft wise, and he's played pretty well to start out his young career. Very athletic tight end, very talented, and it's kind of surprising to see this staff not use him. I think to his full potential. I know they've got other weapons in the form of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but just the total disregard of the tight end position down there in Tampa has been kind of shocking to watch early this year. So going off that context, it was another widely predicted thing that O.J. Howard would be traded this week, just because clearly the team really hasn't had any desire to use him, and if they could get back a couple high round draft picks in exchange, most people thought that'd be a pretty favorable move for them, but they didn't. The Patriots were another team that people thought would be interested. I know, what was the other team? It's escaping me now, but there are definitely a few teams that were named as they were in talks with Tampa to try and put a deal together, but I guess Tampa's asking price is way too high. I know they wanted, I believe, a couple first rounders for him, which is a pretty steep price for any player. The talent's definitely there. I could have seen maybe one first round or a couple second rounders for him, but I think 2 first rounds is, more than 1 first round pick is a lot unless the guy is, an established Pro Bowl level player. So, obviously, again, he wasn't traded today. He's going to be on the Buccaneers for the rest of the year, so it'll be very interesting to me. Something to watch just to see if Tampa Bay does decide to use him a little bit more now. maybe they'll try and incorporate him into their offense now that he's for sure going to be a part of the team. But if not, I'd be surprised if he is on their team by the end of next season, just because I could see him requesting a trade if the Buccaneers don't do it on their own. Just because if I was O.J. Howard and I was being utilized this way, I mean, I'd be pretty disappointed just because you're not getting the targets, you're not getting the catches or the stats, which as he gets closer and closer to that, his rookie contract being up, that's really kind of inhibiting his value to sign a new contract. I know the potential's there, and teams are definitely going to buy into that, but when you don't have those stats, it's harder to negotiate a deal that really kind of encapsulates your full value. So if I were O.J. Howard, I'd be surprised if he didn't request a trade this offseason or next season at some point if he doesn't start to get used a little bit more. So that'll be something interesting to watch. Other than that, there were some rumors that Jalen Adams and Le'Veon Bell might be traded from the Jets that came out this morning. Neither of those obviously led anywhere. Other than that, pretty quiet deadline day overall. There were some big blockbuster trades that happened in the last couple of weeks, but today was, I think it was more noteworthy for how quiet it was just because of the potential it had. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got on that. Be interesting to see how these trades and non-trades kind of play out over the rest of this year.
Yeah, so I think unlike Nate, I had lower expectations for today's trade deadline deadline. There were actually a lot of trades that happened before the deadline that we didn't even talk about, like Diggs and going from Detroit to Seattle, Mika Fitzpatrick from Miami to Pittsburgh. There's others that are just escaping my head. I'm forgot about this, and teams didn't want to give up the draft capital that other teams wanted for, like you said about O.J. Howard. The Bucs are just asking a way too high price for him. I think with Trent Williams, though, I think that's more of a Redskins thing, like a refusal to trade him more so than the asking price, because there were definitely teams that wanted him. But another thing too about Williams is he does have an injury history, so I'm not sure if teams were scared off by that. But and then another thing about Talib that you mentioned, or that I don't think you mentioned, is he's actually on IR, so he's not going to be playing this season anyways, whether he was a Ram or a Dolphin. So the Dolphins don't even get to use him to, like, potentially, for their tanking and stuff. They don't even have to risk him coming out on the field and playing good for them. So it fits it's a win for them because they just, move up in the draft basically for $4 million. But for the Rams, I guess it's just a salary dump, and he wasn't going to play anyways, so they just want to get him off their books. So it's a win-win for both sides. I don't really understand why the Dolphins traded Drake so much, because he is a good young piece. I know you got to tank and everything and start over, but he's actually a player that I think that they should have held on to. I know they have like 15 draft picks in next year's draft or something like that, but still, you gotta hold on to some of your players that you already have. You can't just come in next year with an entire new team, which they might, but I don't know. It's just kind of fascinating how extreme this tanking is going on for them. And the commissioner actually was asked a question about, like, should the NFL go to like a draft lottery like the NBA to to motivate not tanking and stuff. But he said no, they're going to keep it how it is because they want to reward the worst team, the best pick. So yeah, they're really trying to get Tua, I guess. But I didn't expect a whole lot of action today on the trade deadline day, but I know a lot of people were excited for it and they got kind of bummed out that nothing happened. But there were still some other things going on, like Unique Ngakwe's name was thrown around. I don't even know if that was valid at all. I think that was just Ravens fans just hoping. And one other guy that I think you missed here was Chris Harris, had a possibility of being traded, and he would have been a really good player for somebody. But yeah, not a whole lot happened here, and it typically NFL teams don't trade as much as like NBA teams would on a deadline, but there's still a chance that these guys get traded around draft time. So it's not like you won't see these trades happen. It might just be delayed. But we'll move on now to the highly anticipated debate between myself and Kyle.
Yes.
You ready, Kyle?
I'm getting ready.
Okay.
I'll win this one.
Yeah, so I'm going to start my opening statement about, you see a lot of pictures here on the screen. You've got Patrick Mahomes, you've got Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, Christian McCaffrey. I will tell you my order of these, and specifically Aaron Rodgers, because that's the one we're debating. And I'll kind of make my case as to why I don't think Aaron Rodgers should be the MVP and why I think he's farther back in the discussion for MVP as well. And then Kyle's going to go ahead and say why he thinks I'm wrong. And then we'll go back and forth.
Not saying you are wrong.
All right, so let me get this started here, and got my notes ready. So,
Oh, you brought notes?
yeah, man, I made notes here. The debate is won before the debate and preparation, not in the actual debate. That's something that I've heard before, and I truly believe. I think preparation is the key to winning debates. Obviously, you got to be a good speaker and stuff, but still, if you have good preparation, you can probably win a debate. But it doesn't really matter what we think. It matters what the voters think. So if they end up hearing this and get swayed, that'd be pretty awesome. But I'm not expecting that. But let's get this started here. This hypothetical, if we were in charge of picking the MVPs.
We have all the power.
Yeah. So let me start here. My MVP list has got Russell Wilson 1, Mahomes 2, Christian McCaffrey 3, Dak Prescott 4, Deshaun Watson 5, Aaron Rodgers 6, and Lamar Jackson here 7. And really, I think there's a chance that Watson and Rodgers can climb their way higher, but they're going to have to do significant work, in my opinion, to catch Wilson. And I want to start this off by saying, first of all, to people that I think are uneducated about football, wins are not a quarterback stat. Okay, I don't care which of these quarterbacks you look at, winnings, winning the game and stuff, that's not a quarterback stat. There are so many factors that go into a win or a loss. The quarterback's a big one, but it's not fair at all to point records to players and defend that. But what I want to talk about is Aaron Rodgers here and why I don't think he's the MVP. I don't think he's the MVP because Aaron Jones is on the Packers. And Aaron Jones, you cannot underestimate his benefits, his leadership or what, maybe not leadership, but his talent to the team. Okay. Aaron Rodgers passes to the running back a lot. Okay. I've got some stats here. Jones has 325 receiving yards. And then some of these other quarterbacks here, Mahomes, he only has 129 yards to McCoy. And basically, when you look at Jones, all but 30 of his yards came after the catch. So it's just all work done by the running back. Aaron Jones, when he catches the ball from Aaron Rodgers, it's all those yards are a credit to Aaron Jones evading tackles, getting extra yards, all that sort of stuff, staying in bounds. It's all credit to him. It's not receivers running deep routes or anything. It's just dump offs to the running back, which is what he likes to do, much more than all these other quarterbacks. McCoy for the Chiefs, 129 yards receiving. Zeke, 176. Chris Carson in Seattle, 149. Duke Johnson for Houston, 160. Those are all so much minuscule to Aaron Jones's 355. Running back stats in general. Wilson's Seahawks team is probably the closest to Aaron Rodgers. 684 rushing yards between Williams and Jones, and Chris Carson's got 660. But here's what Mahomes has to work with: 362 rushing yards from LaShawn McCoy, Dak Prescott 602, Deshaun Watson 544. None of these quarterbacks have as good of a running attack as Green Bay does have. I want to look at the competition that Aaron Rodgers is going up against. His best game was the Oakland game, where he had all those huge stats and stuff. Well, let's look at Oakland's pass defense. They're ranked 30th in the NFL in passing yards per game. Detroit, 32nd ranked, and they only scored like 20-something points in that game. They couldn't even, light up Detroit for 40. And they should have lost that Detroit game. Aaron Rodgers got the benefit of a lot of calls that allowed him to stay out on the field and pad his stats. If those calls had been called correctly, Detroit would have gotten the ball back more, and Rodgers wouldn't have his hat scored on the Lions defense there. Philly, that Philly game was, I think, his low light, because he had a chance to win that game, but he threw the ball to a contested Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Go Bulls. But still, he had a wide open receiver. He misread the play. It ended up being an interception down at the goal line. You cannot do that. You absolutely cannot do that. That was his fault, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That was his fault, and that's the reason why they lost that game. If he had made the right call there, they would have won, but instead he didn't. They lose to Philly, who's an average team there. QBR is great because it takes into account things like interceptions that don't deserve to be interceptions. It takes into account running. It takes into account accuracy, all sorts of different things, and it's a good stat to use. And Aaron Rodgers is 8th in the season on QBR. Can you believe that? He's 8th. Dak Prescott, the man who you just laughed about when I talked about him, is 1st in QBR. You know why? Because even though he has like 8 interceptions or something, the QBR stat takes into account that those interceptions are like Hail Marys at the end of the game, or bad interceptions where it's the receiver's fault and stuff like that. That's what QBR takes into account of. So you can talk I know you're going to talk about Rodgers and how the receivers dropped and stuff. QBR takes into account drops. Mahomes. I know Mahomes was injured last week, but did we all just forget about how awesome he was playing? He has the most yards per game passing this season. Dak Prescott's 3rd. Rodgers is 7th. So I don't even see any stats here where Rodgers is 1st in. Completion percentage, he's definitely not. Dak Prescott leads in that. He's at 70%. Rodgers is in 11th place at 65%. So some more non-MVP moments. The Chicago game, only scoring 10 points, was very ugly and bad. I talked about the Philly game. I talked about the Lions game. And then look at Russell Wilson, the guy that I picked. Who's he throwing to? I like Lockett. He's a good receiver, but he's not a number 1 receiver. He's throwing to him. He's got a rookie, Metcalf, and rookie receivers never do anything, but that's his number 2 target. Will Disley, his star tight end, hurt, doesn't play anymore. And then Jerron Brown is his 3rd receiver, some guy you've never even heard of. And also, there's only one game where they put up under 20 points. He's basically running this offense with by himself, and also to scoring more than 20 points per game. Hold on, wait, one more thing. The offensive line rankings, I'd take into account offensive line. Pro Football Focus ranks Green Bay as the 10th best offensive line. Patrick Mahomes, what's he got to deal with? The 30th best offensive line. Wilson, the 21st. Houston, they rank 11, so that's around similar. Carolina for Christian McCaffrey, 21st offensive line ranking. So Aaron Rodgers has the benefit of a great offensive line. He's got the benefit of a great defense. 14 takeaways by the Green Bay defense for short fields for Aaron Rodgers, whereas teams like Dallas only have 9 takeaways. Houston, for Deshaun Watson, only 10. Seattle's got 15, so they're an outlier here, but Kansas City with 11. Green Bay gets the ball a lot on defense. They have a great points per game ranking. KC, Houston, Seattle have to overcome bad defenses. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to do that. He just doesn't. And he's got the benefit of a great offensive line. He's got the benefit of a great running back that can catch the ball and make plays. And that play, that like miracle play that happened where he threw that touchdown, he said after the game, the Kansas City game.
I know exactly what you're about to say with that one. I still think that pass is a great pass. I know he meant to pass to Graham, but he put in the perfect position where either two of them could have made a play.
Well, he didn't even see the other guy behind him, so it was just total luck. He said he saw a flash of a jersey. How does he know that it's a Green Bay jersey? He doesn't. He just threw it up there as a prayer.
It's a Green Bay jersey. It's easy to tell between red and green or white.
Yeah, but still, he wasn't even look. He just threw it up as a prayer. I mean, good God, like. That was the most lucky play I've ever seen. That was not.
He threw it in a spot where his receivers can make a play, or it's either going out of bounds.
No, that could have been an interception. That easily could have been an interception. No. That was the most risky, and stupid play I've ever seen.
Williams, he was in front of. I don't even know who was guarding him.
That's because that defense is terrible. That's why you don't remember who it was.
It's not that terrible. Kansas City Chiefs ranks 11th in passing against Rodgers.
But they're 17th in points per game, so they let up a lot of points.
Yeah, but they're 11th in passing. And Rodgers, if you think Rodgers could win after 11th is not that worse. 11th is amazing, considering that San Francisco's like number 1.
We know that.
San Francisco's number 1. Patriots, there's Bills. Denver Broncos. I think what are they? The fourth best with yards allowed.
Not at the time they played them. They've improved after. I'll let you talk now.
They're still the same team.
Now that they've improved a lot since that game.
They're 4th yards allowed, 4th for pass. And you said that Jones? Aaron Jones?
Yeah, Aaron Jones.
Yeah, you said that. What do you say about him? That he's an all-star running back?
Yeah, he is.
Is he? You think he really is an all-star? He's not their whole offense. He only gets 4 yards per average, which is
pretty good.
It's an average running back. All teams have a pretty close to average running back. He's no like Dalvin Cook, or he's no Barkley, he's no McCaffrey. McCaffrey's an amazing running back, and so is Cook. You at least agree with that, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying he's the best running back. I'm just saying you can't deny he's the number one. He has
impact, but there's also Williams, and you say he has all these receiving yards and receptions, but that only ever happened after his number 1 receiver, Davante Adams, got for turf toe, I think it's called.
Mahomes has to deal with that too. Tyreek Hill went out. I don't want to hear the injury excuse.
Injury excuse. Well, without Adams, he has a 70% completion rate, 1,255 yards. He's about 10 yards per attempt, and he's 10 touchdowns since Adams got injured. He also has 120 passing rating, which is way above what Russell Wilson has, which I think Russell Wilson has about 115 right now.
Yeah, but his QBR is better. Wilson's got the second best QBR. So I look at QBR more than passer rating because QBR takes into account running.
Yeah, for the past 2 weeks, Rodgers has been above Russell Wilson.
Okay, I'll give you that for the past 2 weeks, but this is a season award. This is the past 8 weeks, not 2 weeks.
No, the most valuable player. Most valuable player doesn't mean 10 weeks only of the season. It doesn't mean 5 weeks of the season. It just means the most valuable player to their team. Without Russell Wilson, I would give you that. He's a close second, and that without him, his team pretty much has no one. but you say like he
They
has.
do have no one.
Yeah, but Tyler Lockett, he's someone.
He's solid, but he's their number one guy. Like
And Metcalf, he was a second-round pick.
Yeah, but Ricky.
What does Rodgers have without Adams? He has Scantling, which is
he's pretty good now.
He's undrafted. He was undrafted.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he was. He was.
Wait, Valdez Scantling?
Yeah, he was. No, sorry, he was a
not.
fifth-round pick. He was a fifth-round pick. I'm sorry. Scantling was a fifth-round pick. Ellison was undrafted. Kumaro was undrafted, and Lazar was undrafted. So was Shepard. Shepard was undrafted. He's working with all these people, which no one knew anything about. Pretty much.
I knew about Lazard actually.
How do you know about Lazard? How do you know about
Lazard? He was on the Jaguars
He's
for a bit.
yeah.
I knew, so I watched him. I knew he was going to be good. Yeah, we saw him up close, but I'll give you that he hasn't had the greatest.
He has no receiving other than Adams. Adams, praise to him. He's like the fifth best receiver in the NFL right now. I'm just talking to my rear there, but he's a good receiver. I'll give him that. Good. But Rodgers, without his star players, he found other star players. He found Jones. He found Williams. Don't get me started on Graham. Zach knows how much I dislike Graham. He's a beast. I'll give him that. He's 6'7"?
He's a basketball player, basically.
I know. Yeah, he's 6'7". I don't know what he's doing playing football. That's huge for a tight end, considering that they're usually like 6'4", I think. Is that right? 6'3"?
Yeah, I mean, there's some taller ones, but yeah.
Yes.
He's got Mercedes Lewis. He's pretty good.
Yeah.
I can't say that with a straight face. I love you, Mercedes.
Yeah, and he's not only is Rodgers doing he had multiple games where he had above 400 yards. I don't think Russell Wilson barely gets above 300 sometimes, and he's gotten below. I think in one game he had like 180 something yards. He had 182 yards for one game, and he had 195 yards one game, which for a quarterback, that is pretty below average. He has a lot of touchdowns to compensate for that, but he also has running backs to help him. I mean, the running backs, I don't know if they're better or worse than Jones, but they're still decent running backs that could help him. And Russell Wilson is pretty mobile himself. I would say he's probably even more mobile than Aaron Rodgers is.
Yeah, he is.
Which helps.
That does help because he's got more rushing yards. He's got more rushing touchdowns. That makes the case more for him being more valuable. He has to do more.
Aaron Rodgers is not only a quarterback, he's pretty much the coordinator himself. He's the offense coordinator himself. He picks the plays. When it comes to crunch time, he knows exactly how to read the defense, and he's calm. He reads the defense, and then he makes the play. And you keep going on about the pass to Williams and how I still believe that's a good pass. I mean, he did say there's luck.
It was a prayer. It was like let me just throw this up.
There's luck in every pass. There's luck in every pass.
Well, that one was all luck.
No, it was not.
He wasn't even trying to throw it to him.
He was trying to make put in a position where either Graham could make a play or Williams can make a play. That's what makes a good quarterback. He lets everyone, and he passes to everyone. When Rodgers had Nelson on team, I'll give you that. He wasn't a MVP because he only passed to one person. One person every single time. Jordy Nelson. He was his number one receiver. Right now, without Adams, even with Adams, he passed to everyone. And even though Adams has a lot of yards, I think Scantling was the number one has enough receptions. Yeah, even with Adams, he didn't even pass to him the most. He just has the most yards, which I'll give him credit for that. Enough about Rodgers though. For one person I feel like shouldn't even be on this list is Dak Prescott, and you could give your information after this. But without Dak Prescott, without his star receivers like Cooper and Gallup, I think I said his name wrong. Gallup, yeah, Gallup. Without his two-star wide receivers, he's nothing. And
I would disagree with that.
You would disagree with that? How would you disagree with that? They have the most receptions. They have the most yards. He's pretty much like Rodgers, Jordy Nelson combined.
Yeah, well, you play with who you have. So if you have the guys available that are really good, you throw to them. But he's still number one in QBR. He makes smart decisions. He doesn't. I know he's got a lot of
He made smart
turnovers.
decisions when he faced the Packers.
Okay,
He has so many interceptions. I don't know how you call that
Those-
smart. I don't know how you call that smart.
No, those interceptions are misleading. They're like Hail Mary at the end of the game, end of the half, and there's some of them are bad. Like, in that Green Bay game, there was that one interception that should have been pass interference. Like, that was quite obviously pass interference. Another one, you could have said his receiver should have made a better effort on the play. I'm not saying Dak Prescott should be the MVP, but I'm putting him in that conversation. His completion percentage is the best in football.
He's dead last.
I don't see. I mean, I want to hear what
dead
Nate says about
last.
him later, and then let's not forget about that guy in the top left. Okay, the guy.
He's been injured. He hasn't been in the game.
He's only been injured for 2 weeks, and he still has the most yards per game passing, 311.
I like to see if he does that after his injury.
Oh, he'll be. And that's the thing too.
And he has Kelsey, and he has Tyreek Hill. Those are two amazing receivers.
Tyreek Hill has been injured most of the season. Sammy Watkins, his number 2 receiver, has been injured most of the season. He's been throwing to Mecole Hardman, the rookie out of Georgia,
How
who
about
I
Kelsey?
really like,
How
but
about
he's still a rookie. Kelsey's there, but teams double team him now because they know that Kelsey's the only threat. So he's basically been doing this with guys you never heard of either. So let's not,
Rodgers has been doing this for years. Let me just tell you that.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't.
He has no one. Without Adams, he has no one.
I'm not talking about resumes. I'm talking about this year, where we got to look
talking about this year. He has no one on his team. He's making star players people you haven't heard of.
It's pretty good. I saw Valdez
5th round pick when he first came in. 5th round pick.
I saw him at USF. He was pretty good. I saw
Rodgers
Allen Lazard.
Scantling better.
I don't know about that. I saw Scantling. I saw Quentin Flowers throw Scantling a lot.
The quarterback passing to him, Scantling would not be this amazing player you say he is.
Scantling got open in that Chicago game for the only big play in that game for the Packers. That was Scantling. He got open. Rodgers got him the ball. He got him the ball kind of late in that situation. If he had gotten the ball a little bit earlier, that could have been a touchdown. Instead, Scantling kind of had to go back to that.
Same with Broncos. He beat the Broncos. They have a really, really good defense. Vikings have a really good defense. Bears have a really good defense. No, not Vikings. I think they're 7th in pass, which is really good, and Bears they're like 10th, I think, in pass.
Yeah, but
which are all really good.
They ran the ball. They ran the ball down the Broncos' throats, and
they shouldn't run down the throat. They shouldn't run down the throat.
I know, but that you can't say it's Rodgers. You can't put that as an MVP for Rodgers if you run the ball down your throat. And then that Bears game, they were terrible, and that was a flat out awful game.
That was the first game of the season, and not only does that's his first game with ever seeing these new receivers. He has a new coach and a new offensive new offense, a totally new offense. He's coming from nothing and making a 7-1 season out of it.
Wins are not a quarterback stat, so don't say 7-1 or anything like that.
But he's having all these yards. He had 422 yards with the Raiders. He had 305 with the Kansas City Chiefs. He had and you say the Eagles.
Those are bad defenses.
You said the Eagles were a terrible game for him. He had 422 yards that game. 422 yards that game. That
he made the worst decision in his career by throwing that interception at the end of the game.
Losses. Hey, I'm gonna quote you on this. Losses are not a quarterback stat. I'm going to record. Not only did Shepard drop a punt, I think that game, he also had. I'm probably messing up this game. God. Coleman also got, I think, interception off of Shepard's face mask. So Shepard himself, he's a terrible receiver.
I'll defend Shepard on that play because
it hit him in the face mask.
Yeah,
that's a perfect pass.
Yeah, but
if my high school quarterback gave me that pass, that was amazing. It was almost
like he wasn't expecting it. Like it was just like it wasn't as I think it looks a lot more embarrassing than it really was.
Are you defending his punt?
I'm not going to defend that, but I'm just saying.
Also with Scantling.
Yeah, what about Scantling?
you say that was all Rodgers' fault. It wasn't really. It was in his hands. The cornerback, all his interceptions are not Rodgers' fault.
Yeah, but there was a wide open guy.
The Scantling had the ball in his hands and he dropped it. He messed up. No, he had it in his hands. The corner was nowhere near his hands. He could have easily brought that ball into his chest. Don't you give me that.
No,
Scantling's amazing quarterback.
Scantling's amazing, but he was being double teamed on that, and Rodgers chose to throw to him when he had a wide open guy. He did not read the defense.
Scantling had the ball in his hands.
Well, if he had read the defense, it wouldn't have been an issue. It would have been an easy touchdown, and they would have won. But instead,
you know who also made that bad decision? Russell Wilson.
that was a couple of years. We're talking this year, and that was Russell Wilson. That was Pete Carroll too. I don't think Wilson wanted to do that.
Before he learned from that mistake. It's not just Rodgers. It's a new offense. He's taking. Like I said, Rodgers and LaFleur are taking nothing and making it something.
Well, I think right now the way things are going, I think Green Bay would be fine without Rodgers because they have a really good defense. Whereas
they do not have a good defense. What do you mean? They're like 20th in yards allowed. What are you talking about?
No, they're not, dude.
Yes, they are.
Yes,
they are.
They're 11th in points per game, though. They're 11th in points per game. Can I interest you in that? They have 14 takeaways. Can I interest you in that?
Yeah, all from fumbles. That wasn't defense. That wasn't defense. That was his bad offense.
They might be giving up yards, but in that Detroit game, they just let Detroit kick field goals. They stopped them from scoring touchdowns, which is huge. That's the only reason Green Bay won that game is because the defense made them kick field goals. If the defense hadn't made them kick field goals, that would have been a runaway, plus the referees, but that's another story.
And like the Seattle Seahawks is not as bad as you think. I think Packers, what do you say Packers were 20 points per game or so, you said?
11th in points per game. Seattle's 20th. Houston is 18th. Dallas is 7th.
But
Dallas
you saying these rankings like they really matter, like they really change. Yeah. It seems worse than it actually is. I'm looking right now, and Packers allows 20 yards per game, 20 points per game. I'm sorry, and Seattle Seahawks lets 22 points per game. It's really not that big of a difference, as you make it seem.
Still,
between 8th and 20th.
And let's look at Mahomes. Mahomes here,
don't even talk about
Mahomes. Without Mahomes, the Chiefs are nothing.
I'll give you this. If Mahomes comes back and drops 300 yards per game, multiple touchdowns, like 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, I'll put him in the race with Wilson and Aaron Rodgers again. But right now,
he was having a runaway. Mahomes was the runaway guy until he got hurt. Yeah.
Sorry, we're cutting Nate out of this discussion. Nate, you have anything bad?
Man, I don't. Y'all covered a lot of this. I don't know. I'm more partial out of all these guys. I'm pretty partial to Russell Wilson this year, just because I know y'all kind of touched a little bit on everybody, so I'm gonna keep it kind of brief. But just what he's been doing with that supporting cast. Obviously, he's got
thank you.
Chris Carson's pretty good.
Who does Rodgers have?
He's got Aaron Jones, who has Aaron
Jones.
That's his third best receiver.
About 4 weeks ago, you told me Aaron Jones wasn't that good of a quarterback. I remember you saying that.
I don't know. When did I say that? I don't remember.
You said that 4 weeks ago during before the game where he caught 6 touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, and Rodgers got 0 touchdowns. You were like, yeah, Aaron Jones, he's like a second tier running back. It's a quote from
he is, but he's playing better. He's playing in spot.
Yeah, I'll give you that. He's small.
He actually is.
For his size, he runs really fast.
He's
he
fast. My God.
He plays his heart out.
Fast.
But before Adams got injured, he can't even he won without Jones. He won without Adams. He won without Ellison some games.
Win. The team won. Don't say he won.
Green Bay's defense has been playing really well this year too. A lot better than I would.
They're doing
their defense is a lot better than Seattle's defense.
They're still not really that great. They're not even. I wouldn't even consider them a top 20, top 10, top 20 defense. The Packers. And that's coming from a Packers
Yeah,
fan.
but
They're allowing too many yards. They're allowing. Did you see the Kansas City Chiefs game? Literally, Kelsey was wide open. Tyreek Hill, even though he's fast, he was wide open. How can you literally comprehend how a defense could allow that happen?
every defense messes up eventually. But
Yeah, messes up like 4 times. Kelsey was wide open like 3 times. Like, how could you make? He's a huge guy. How could you miss him?
yeah, but Seattle's got to do more, man. And Houston, they even have a worse defense, man. Like Houston's defense is really bad.
And you
Now
see,
without Watt, like it's
No
Rodgers
JJ
right
Watt,
now,
all the
Rodgers-
injuries.
has more yards than Russell Wilson does.
That's because
Yeah,
hasn't he played one more game than him? Or
Yeah, but even if he played
okay,
that
well,
game, wouldn't
yeah.
that make a difference?
I don't know. Yeah,
I just think what Wilson's doing in Seattle, especially with that, their O line is pretty trash too. So he's really got to create.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
got to
thanks,
use
man.
mobility to create, and
I'm looking
he's-
on Pro Football, and Green Bay's 10th, and Seattle they say is
21st.
21st.
Yeah, 21st. Yeah.
And what really gets me with Wilson is his touchdown to interception ratio 17-1. That's just crazy to be putting those kind of stats, really
Yeah,
carrying the
but did
team
you
like that
see
while
his
still
interception?
making the
Did you see
decisions.
his interception though?
I mean, yeah, it was pretty
Did you
bad,
see
but
his interception?
He's
What I
number
mean-
2 in QBR. Aaron Rodgers is 8 in QBR. 8. How can you pick an MVP that's got that far
Aaron
down the list?
Rodgers has been doing better and better every week, and he's doing better than Russell Wilson.
That might
right
be
now.
true. That
Right
might
now.
be true. But
Right now.
we're talking
I don't
about the
say right
season.
now.
We're not talking about this last week. We're talking about the accumulation of 8 games. We're
And
talking about
even during Rodgers' worst, he didn't do as bad as Wilson's 180
I think he did.
yards.
that
180
Chicago
yards.
game.
That's
Chicago
really
game.
below
Crazy. I
average.
mean,
What about that Chicago game? You can't defend that at
His
all. You're gonna
Chicago,
put-
his Chicago game, he had like 200 something yards still though.
yeah, but the offense only put up 10 points, and it was only
And he
one
had
play.
Devontae Adams
Against
that week.
one of the best
Yes.
defenses in the NFL.
Okay, let's move
Same
on
with
from the
Broncos.
Raptors here.
Not
Same with
much
Vikings.
lately, though.
Wait, what
Let's
did you
move
say,
on.
Nate?
So they haven't been as good lately. They've been
No, they've
Kinda.
been sucking. Like I said, Kelsey
Dude.
opened 3 times.
the Bears defense.
What happens?
Oh,
the Bears.
Oh,
defense,
they're as amazing as we all thought they were.
well, that's because
they're
the
still-
offense didn't
they're
give
still,
them any
like-
favors.
That's true
Like I
as
said, I
well.
looked this up. They're still 3rd for points allowed, 6th for yards allowed. They're still doing really good.
Yeah.
That's fine, but the games that Aaron Rodgers has really good games, like the Philly, the Oakland, the Detroit, those teams are all 21st or worst in passing yards, and
Awful.
Detroit's actually worse. They're 32nd. Oakland's 30th. He's got the benefit of that. Okay, so obviously you're gonna make
Yeah, Russell
Yeah.
Wilson faced bad teams, and he only got like 20 points. And
what team
Rodgers got
game was
like.
that?
Hang on. Let me look at these games.
But while you're doing that, Nate, what do you think about Dak Prescott? Because I've got him in here, and Kyle
No.
doesn't think he should be in the
He
conversation.
shouldn't even be considered.
Dude, you don't understand
me-
how much Zeke is having a
Let
bad
Nate
year.
talk. Let Nate talk.
No, I mean, I don't. I'm torn on Dak. I thought first 4 weeks, I thought he definitely belonged in the conversation. Since then, I don't know. Just watching his games, and they always kind of end up as the 4:30 game on whatever channel it is, Fox, I think.
yeah.
So I've seen a lot of him. He just really hasn't, I guess, impressed me. I mean, the stats are definitely there. I think he belongs in the conversation. I don't know that he's got a serious chance to win it just because he hasn't really. He just hasn't really looked impressive, I guess. Like, there's been some plays, and part of that definitely goes back to the play calling, too. It's been, I mean, it's always seems like it's pretty bland with the Cowboys, but I feel like there's been a lot of opportunities for him to kind of come in and make some big statement games.
I think the
Really
Eagles
show
were
out
a
for the
big game,
team.
but I think the Eagles game was huge for him. I mean, like,
Oh yeah, I mean he's definitely had some great like outings. Don't get me wrong, but I just think overall, like look at the Jets game, some of those.
the Jets have a
He's
good
been bad. He's
defense.
been really bad.
I mean,
I don't know. To me, I think it's been a little bit up and down. I like to see a little bit more consistency from him.
yeah, I agree. I don't have
100%
him as
agree.
number one.
Just like how Wilson is not consistent.
Wilson is the
He's
definition of
inconsistent.
The
Yeah,
consistency.
he's only
last
had one
2
bad game.
games, he hasn't been that consistent. you're saying he's a god and like, oh my god, he's untouchable, but he really is not. If you look at his yards and his perception rating, or sorry, I'm saying that word wrong so many times. Reception
You meant
rating.
to say passer rating?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, when you look at that, he's not really getting that many yards per game. Really, he's a high QBR. But Rodgers is not far behind. He's growing his QBR every single game. Like
He's got a lower completion
like,
percentage. Like
and
that's important too.
Seahawks almost lost to the Falcons, which have like the second worst points per defense other than the Miami Dolphins.
Okay, that score is misleading because they were up like 24-0, and they just fell asleep. That score is misleading. If Seattle won, they could have won that.
They only got 27 points against the Cardinals. How about
27
that
is not bad. That's
a
bad?
pretty dang good game in the NFL.
Against Rodgers 44 or so.
Well, 44 against who? Oakland?
Yeah.
The worst defense?
Which is better than the Cardinals.
Worst defense in the league.
What
And also how about the Bengals? 21-20. He almost lost to the Bengals.
Okay, I mean, we're not talking about wins, dude. I've never used wins as an argument for any of these guys.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
That shows you how bad Seattle is. That's more proof.
Yeah,
that's
more on the
like,
defense
but
and
it also shows if Russell Wilson is really this god tier quarterback that's really lifting his team, he should be giving more points. If he's this god tier like you say he is.
He can't do everything. He can't. He doesn't
one
blocking
game
for him. Like
that's what Zach's like making it believe. Like he has to do everything.
He does.
Does he though?
I think so. Definitely more than Rodgers.
Lamar definitely has to do more than Wilson. Lamar Jackson, he's pretty much their running back. He's pretty much their running back.
Mark Ingram, dude, look at him. Look at their tight ends. They have like 3 really good tight ends. They have a good offensive line. They have a good defense. They actually have some good receivers now.
Hollywood Brown,
Lamar's a lot, but still, I don't know. He's just not a good passer. I mean, like,
no, he's not. But
so McCaffrey, he's a beast. McCaffrey, I have above Rodgers because
he's Dalvin Cook is definitely better. Barkley's definitely a better running back.
You think Barkley is a better, or you think Dalvin?
And Dalvin Cook, yeah.
Cook? Also, you got to take into account his impact in the passing game.
His receiving is incredible.
He's basically like the entire offense. He's on every single snap, which is unheard of for a running back. Like the teams have to game plan him as a receiver and as a running back. That's how good of a dual threat he is. Whereas Dalvin Cook's mainly a pure running back. His stats are unbelievable this year. His yards per carry and stuff, his yards per game. He is the sole reason why Carolina's even contending still right now. If it wasn't for him, they probably wouldn't have won any of their games. Like, I really think he's had such a huge impact, and people always think about quarterbacks, but for that team, he basically is the quarterback. That's how important he is. Don't sleep on Deshaun Watson too. I mean, he puts up a lot of points every week. You know that. He makes inspiring passes when his offensive line is terrible, which they are. I mean, like, I know he's got a lot of weapons to work with, but some guys have been getting hurt. Hopkins actually has quite a few drops this season, so he's doing it all by himself too, I think. I just don't think Rodgers has a really good past 2 weeks, but you got to look at the whole picture here, and I don't think with the whole picture he should be the MVP.
You're just going off of Wilson having like 3 amazing games in the early season and like having pretty close to average games for the rest of the season.
No.
They're pretty close to average.
You have a natural bias against Wilson because he beats the team every year in the playoffs.
Bull crap. You ever heard of Hail Mary, dude? There shouldn't be.
That's exactly what I'm saying. You have a natural bias against him.
No, I do not.
You do. You talk about Hail Mary.
If I had a natural bias in him, I wouldn't put him at number 2.
Well, you only have to put him at number 2 because he's like consistently number 1. But
I have Rodgers, Wilson, McCaffrey. Then I put Mahomes. Then I put. Sorry, I can't even remember my own handwriting.
Lamar probably.
Then I put Lamar. Then I put Watson. Then I put Dak. Dak. Just get Dak out of there. I still just
Okay,
delete
guys.
that picture.
Well, we do have to wrap things up here. We could probably go on for hours and hours, but I don't want to make this like that long of a show. But thank you to everybody for watching this. It was a fun, spirited debate here. We definitely threw up a lot of
It's more like
stats.
it was more like a logical argument.
Yeah. So it was fun having you on here as for the show, Kyle. Hopefully you can come back sometime. Really quickly though, I do want to show off some of your picks here. So as a guest, I allowed Kyle to make his NFL picks for this week. I'll just run down here his picks. He's got San Francisco beating Arizona, like we all do. He's got Houston beating Jacksonville. He's got Buffalo beating Washington, Minnesota beating Kansas City, the Jets beating the Dolphins, Eagles beating the Bears, Colts over the Steelers, Panthers over the Titans, Lions over the Raiders, Seahawks over the Buccaneers, Broncos over the Browns, Packers over the Chargers, Patriots over the Ravens, and Cowboys over the Giants. So it's a good set of picks there, man. We'll let the audience know how you end up. You always claim that you pick games right every time, so
I mean, I won the bet last year for the Super Bowl.
okay, but we all know that New Orleans game shouldn't have been like that.
Hey man, I'm telling you, I win.
It's a little bit of luck involved with Kyle, but but yeah. So thanks, Kyle, for being on the show here. Hopefully you'll be back sometime later.
It was fun.
Yeah, and definitely if this conversation comes up again later in the year, we'll make sure to have you on when we have a bigger sample size to debate with. But with that being said, guys, I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Don't forget about Subvember. Get your friends, get your family to subscribe to Clutch Crew Sports on wherever they get their podcasts on. We put out 2 videos a week, 2 to 3 actually, I should say. So there's a lot to choose from, a lot for everybody. If you're an NBA guy, college guy, NFL guy, it doesn't really matter. We put out videos a lot for those type of sports, and hopefully you guys can interact with us too and get your topics and stuff on this show, like our friend from Twitch, Jackson, did with the Carolina topic earlier. So wanted to end with those few words, and so stay tuned. We've got an episode coming out, a reaction video for college football and for NFL coming out in a couple days. So hope everybody's a great rest of your day. For Eric, peace.